the cabin that shouldn't have existed. I've lived in Alaska for almost my entire life. My family moved to Fairbanks when I was 6 years old, and from that moment on, the wilderness became part of who I was. As a teenager, I spent every summer working at remote fish camps. By my early 20s, I had become a professional wilderness guide. Now at 29, I had spent years leading people through some of the most unforgiving landscapes in northern Alaska. The wilderness never really scared me, not anymore. After enough years out there, you learn to trust your instincts. You learn how to read the weather, how to navigate, how to survive. I honestly believe there wasn't much left that could surprise me. Then, 3 years ago, everything I thought I knew was proven wrong. At the time, I was dating a man named Randy. He grew up in rural British Columbia. If anyone understood the outdoors better than I did, it was probably him, especially when it came to winter survival. Snow, ice, navigation, that was his specialty. We had been together for about 4 years. Most couples spent weekends at restaurants or relaxing on the couch. We preferred week-long hunting trips, remote mountain trails, and backcountry camping where one mistake could actually cost you your life. That probably sounds dramatic, but in Alaska, it's simply the truth. Our plan seemed simple. We would travel by snowmobile between 2 registered wilderness cabins about 60 miles apart, spend 1 night at each cabin, then head home. 4 days. Easy. We had completed the exact same route twice before, without a single problem. The weather forecast looked perfect, clear skies, manageable temperatures, nothing unusual, so we weren't worried, not even a little. The first day went exactly as expected. We reached the second cabin late in the afternoon, cooked freeze-dried meals that Randy somehow insisted tasted amazing, even though they definitely didn't. Then we spent the evening playing cards beside the fire. It was peaceful, comfortable, completely ordinary. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of the wind. Not ordinary wind, the kind that shakes the walls. The moment I opened the cabin door, my stomach dropped. A full blizzard had swallowed the landscape overnight. Snow blew sideways across the open ground. Visibility had dropped to almost nothing. The strange part was, the forecast had never mentioned a storm, not even a chance of snow. But there it was. Randy and I looked at each other. We had enough food to stay another day. Plenty of supplies. There was no real reason to leave. Looking back, we should have stayed exactly where we were. Instead, we convinced ourselves we could make it. That decision almost killed us. The storm became worse the farther we traveled. The wind was so powerful, it erased the trail almost as quickly as we crossed it. Eventually, it became almost impossible to see anything beyond the front of the snowmobile. Randy volunteered to ride ahead. I followed the tracks his machine left behind in the snow. It was the safest way to travel, or so we believed. For nearly an hour, everything seemed under control. Then, without warning, everything fell apart. 1 second, Randy was riding normally. The next, his snowmobile flipped violently. I barely had time to react. I slammed on my brakes, jumped off my machine, and ran toward him. The moment I reached him, I knew something was terribly wrong. His snowmobile had landed directly on top of him. I fought with every ounce of strength I had to pull the machine away. When I finally managed to free him, I looked down at his leg. I wish I hadn't. It was bent in a direction no human leg should ever bend. Even then, Randy barely screamed. That was the kind of man he was. Years earlier, he had once finished a 2-day hike with a badly sprained ankle without telling anyone until we reached civilization. If he looked terrified, I knew the injury had to be catastrophic. I immediately tried getting him onto my snowmobile. It seemed like the only chance we had, but Randy stood 6'2" and weighed well over 200 pounds. Moving him through deep snow was almost impossible. Somehow, I managed to lift him onto the back seat. For just a few seconds, I thought it might actually work. Then the snowmobile shifted beneath us. Randy lost his balance and slipped off the side. The sound he made when he hit the ground is something I'll never forget. I tried one more time. This attempt was even worse. His injured leg couldn't support him at all. Every small movement sent unbearable pain through his body, no matter how hard I tried. I couldn't hold him in place and control the snowmobile at the same time. Finally, he looked at me. His face was pale. His breathing was uneven, and in a voice I had never heard before, he simply said, "Stop." Not because he wanted to give up, because he knew the plan wasn't going to work. That's when reality finally caught up with both of us. We were stranded, alone, in the middle of a blizzard, miles from the nearest cabin, and if we didn't come up with another plan, neither of us was getting out alive. I reached for the satellite phone. My hands were shaking so badly that I almost dropped it into the snow. After several attempts, I finally managed to get a signal. At least, I thought I did. I gave our coordinates as clearly as I could, explained that Randy had suffered a serious leg injury, and begged whoever was on the other end to send help. Then the connection disappeared. Just like that. I had no idea whether anyone had actually heard me, or if the call had gone through at all. The truth was, neither of us could afford to sit there and hope. We both knew what had to happen. There wasn't even much discussion. I covered Randy with every extra layer of clothing we had, wrapped him inside our emergency blanket, placed food, water and survival gear within arm's reach. Then I marked our exact location on my GPS. He looked up at me through the blowing snow. "Be careful." A moment later, he added one more thing. "And don't do anything stupid." I nodded. Neither of us said goodbye. We didn't have to. I climbed back onto my snowmobile, started the engine, and disappeared into the white storm. The blizzard had become even worse. The world around me no longer looked real. The snow erased every landmark I remembered. Trees appeared like dark shadows, then vanished again. I navigated almost entirely by instinct, and the GPS mounted in front of me. For nearly 45 minutes, I kept pushing forward, then something started feeling wrong. The terrain didn't match my memory. The hills weren't where they should have been. The tree line looked unfamiliar. At first, I blamed the storm. Snow can completely change the appearance of a landscape. I kept telling myself that was all it was, but the feeling refused to go away. Instead, it became stronger. Then, through the trees on my left, I saw smoke, real smoke, rising into the grey sky. For a split second, relief flooded through me. I thought I had somehow reached one of the wilderness cabins. I immediately turned toward it, but as I got closer, something didn't seem right. The building looked different, smaller, older. One side of it was almost buried beneath a massive snowdrift. It definitely wasn't either of the cabins we were supposed to be using. Still, smoke meant fire. Fire meant warmth, and warmth usually meant people. I shut off the snowmobile, climbed through the deep snow and made my way toward the front door. I knocked, once, twice, 3 times. No answer. I waited. Nothing. Finally, I reached for the doorknob. It turned easily. The door wasn't locked. I stepped inside. Warm air immediately surrounded me. It felt incredible after being out in the freezing storm. Someone had definitely been living there. A wood stove burned quietly in one corner. The fire inside was still alive. On the floor, there was a bedroll. Next to it sat an open can of food with a spoon still resting inside. It honestly looked as though whoever lived there had stepped outside only a few minutes earlier. "Hello?" My voice echoed through the tiny cabin. No response. I called out again. Still nothing. For a few moments, I simply stood there, warming my frozen hands near the stove, trying the satellite phone one more time. No signal. Nothing. The silence inside the cabin was unsettling. But I couldn't stay. Randy was still out there, waiting, depending on me. I turned toward the door, ready to leave. That's when something caught my eye. On a wooden shelf against the back wall sat a pair of binoculars. Beside them, a folded map and an old notebook. Curiosity got the better of me. I unfolded the map. The moment I looked at it, a cold feeling spread through my body. It was a trail map, the same region Randy and I had been traveling through. Several locations had been circled with black marker. I immediately recognized 2 of them. The cabins we had been using, written beside each circle, were dates. Some were from that winter, others dated back to previous years. Someone had been watching those cabins for a long time. I slowly picked up the notebook. My stomach tightened. Every page contained handwritten observations, descriptions of people, what they were wearing, which direction they were traveling, how many people were together, what equipment they carried. Page after page, nothing but records of strangers moving through the wilderness. I flipped another page, then another. My hands began trembling. I couldn't shake the feeling that Randy and I were somewhere inside that notebook. that whoever had written it had already seen us. I never checked. I didn't need to. Every instinct inside me screamed the same warning. Leave, now. Suddenly, the cabin no longer felt warm. It no longer felt safe. It felt like a trap. I carefully placed the notebook back onto the shelf, then slowly backed toward the door. My hand had almost reached the doorknob when a sound exploded beneath my feet. A scream. Not outside, not upstairs, below me, under the floorboards. It was a woman. She wasn't speaking. She wasn't calling for help. She was simply screaming. The loudest, most horrifying scream I have ever heard in my life. It sounded like someone was being tortured directly beneath the cabin. The sound hit me so hard, I actually jumped backward. Every instinct took over. I threw the door open, ran through the snow, started the snowmobile as fast as I could, and drove away without looking back. I never saw the cabin again. I didn't stop, I didn't slow down. I drove through the blizzard as fast as the snowmobile would allow. The scream kept echoing inside my head, over and over again. It sounded so real, so close, that more than once, I caught myself looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see someone chasing me through the storm. But there was nothing, only endless white, only the wind. I kept riding until the cabin had completely disappeared behind the snow. Only then did I force myself to think. Randy, he was still waiting for me. Every minute I spent running from that place was another minute he was alone in the freezing cold. I checked my GPS. For a terrifying moment, it couldn't find my position. The screen flashed, searching for satellites. Searching. Then finally, the coordinates appeared. I immediately turned toward Randy's location. The ride back felt much longer than before. The storm hadn't weakened. If anything, it had become even more violent. More than once. I wondered if I had imagined the cabin. Maybe the stress, the cold, the exhaustion had caused me to hallucinate. But then I remembered the notebook, the map, the observations. Someone had been there, someone had been watching people. That much was real. Nearly an hour later, I finally spotted Randy. He was exactly where I had left him, buried beneath a layer of fresh snow. For one horrifying second, I thought he was dead. Then he lifted one hand. Relief hit me so hard my knees almost gave out. I rushed over to him. He looked exhausted. His lips had turned pale blue. But somehow, he was still conscious. You were gone a long time. I nodded, I know. I wanted to tell him about the cabin, about the scream, about the notebook, but the words refused to come out. Instead, I simply said, I couldn't find any help. He looked at me for a moment, then quietly asked, what happened? I hesitated. Finally, I told him everything, every single detail, the smoke, the abandoned cabin, the notebook, the scream beneath the floor. When I finished, he didn't laugh, he didn't question me, he simply stared into the blowing snow. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. I thought I heard someone too. I looked at him. What do you mean? While you were gone, he swallowed hard. I kept hearing footsteps, walking around me. I couldn't see anyone. But every few minutes, I heard someone circling. Crunch, crunch, exactly the way I'd heard them outside the cabin. Neither of us spoke after that. There was nothing left to say. Almost another hour passed. Then very faintly, I heard something through the wind. An engine. At first, I wasn't sure. The storm made strange noises, but gradually it became louder, closer. Then another engine joined it. Rescue crews. I have never been so happy to hear another human being in my life. A search and rescue team emerged through the blizzard on snowmobiles. They had received enough of my satellite call to estimate our location. It had taken them hours to reach us. The rescuers immediately stabilized Randy's leg, loaded him onto a rescue sled, and began the long trip back. Once we reached safety, doctors confirmed his leg had been badly fractured in multiple places. He needed surgery, then months of rehabilitation. He eventually recovered, but he never returned to wilderness guiding again. Neither did I. A few weeks later, after everything had settled down, I contacted the local authorities. I told them about the mysterious cabin. I gave them the approximate coordinates. I described everything I had seen. Several officers searched the area. They never found it. Not the cabin, not the smoke. Nothing. According to them, there had never been any structure in that location, at least not in decades. I even returned months later with one of the rescue volunteers. The weather was clear, visibility stretched for miles. We searched the entire area. There was nothing there. No cabin, no chimney, no tracks, not even a foundation. It was as though the building had never existed. For a long time, I tried convincing myself there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe I had become disoriented. Maybe I entered a different cabin. Maybe the stress had distorted my memory, but no explanation ever answered one question. If the cabin wasn't real, then whose footsteps had Randy heard? Even now, 3 years later, there are nights when I wake up hearing that scream beneath the floorboards. Perfectly clear, exactly the way I heard it that day. Sometimes I wonder if someone is still trapped down there, still screaming, still waiting for someone to open the door. And sometimes I'm afraid someone eventually will.